There was a time when Riddick Bowe stood at the absolute peak of the boxing world, a towering heavyweight with rare agility, crushing power, and a natural instinct that made everything he did inside the ring look almost effortless. He wasn't just another contender chasing greatness. He was greatness, at least for a moment. But what makes his story unforgettable is not just how high he rose, but how quickly everything slipped away once fame, pressure, and poor decisions took over. Bowe's journey began in the tough streets of Brooklyn, New York, where survival itself was a daily fight. Growing up in Brownsville, one of the most dangerous neighborhoods in America at the time, he learned early on that strength wasn't just physical, it was mental. Boxing became his escape, his discipline, and eventually his identity. By the time he reached the amateur level, his talent was undeniable. He represented the United States in the 1988 Olympics, winning a silver medal after a controversial loss to Lennox Lewis. That loss lit a fire inside him, a burning desire not just to compete, but to dominate. When Bowe turned professional, it didn't take long for the boxing world to realize they were witnessing something special. He moved through opponents with a mix of size, speed, and intelligence that heavyweight boxing rarely sees. Standing at 6'5" with an 81-inch reach, he had the physical tools of a giant, but he fought with the finesse of a much smaller man. Under the guidance of legendary trainer Eddie Futch, Bowe developed into a complete fighter. He wasn't just knocking people out. He was outthinking them, breaking them down round by round. Everything built up to one defining moment in 1992, when Bowe faced Evander Holyfield for the undisputed heavyweight championship. That fight wasn't just a clash of two elite fighters. It was a war that would define an era. Over 12 brutal rounds, Bowe showcased everything he had: power, endurance, intelligence, and heart. In the end, he emerged victorious, becoming the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. It was the moment he had worked his entire life for. He had reached the top. But this is where the story begins to change. Fame hit Bowe hard, and it came fast. Suddenly, he wasn't just a boxer anymore. He was a global star. Money poured in, attention surrounded him, and expectations skyrocketed. For many fighters, this is the moment where discipline becomes even more important. But for Bowe, discipline started to slip. The hunger that once drove him began to fade, replaced by comfort and distractions. One of the earliest signs of trouble came when Bowe made the shocking decision to vacate his WBC title rather than face Lennox Lewis in a rematch. It wasn't just a missed fight. It was a statement that confused fans and critics alike. Why would a champion avoid a challenge that could cement his legacy? The infamous moment where the WBC belt was literally thrown into a trash can became symbolic of Bowe's changing mindset. It was no longer about proving greatness, something had shifted. As his fame grew, so did the chaos around him. Bowe's personal life became increasingly unstable. Reports of poor training habits began to surface. Weight gain became a serious issue. Instead of maintaining the sharp condition that made him champion, he started showing up heavier, slower, and less focused. The discipline that once defined him was slowly being replaced by inconsistency. Even inside the ring, the difference was noticeable. While Bowe still had moments of brilliance, he no longer looked like the unstoppable force he once was. His rematch with Evander Holyfield in 1993 showed both his resilience and his decline. He lost the fight, and although he later regained the title in their third bout, the aura of invincibility was gone. He was still winning, but something deeper had changed. Fame doesn't just bring money and attention. It brings pressure, temptation, and a constant spotlight that can expose every weakness. For Bowe, that spotlight became overwhelming. Instead of tightening his focus, he drifted further away from the discipline that made him great. Training camps became less serious. Lifestyle choices began to affect his performance. The same man who once trained like a machine was now struggling to maintain consistency. Outside the ring, things were even more troubling. Bowe's life became filled with controversies and personal struggles. Incidents involving the law, emotional instability, and poor decision-making started to overshadow his achievements. The public began to see not just a champion, but a man losing control of his own life. Fame had amplified everything, both the good and the bad, and in Bowe's case, the bad was starting to take over. Perhaps the most frustrating part of Bowe's story is the potential that was never fully realized. At his best, he was arguably one of the most complete heavyweights in history. He had the size, skill, and ring IQ to dominate for years. Many believed he could have had legendary rivalries with fighters like Lennox Lewis, or even stood alongside names like Mike Tyson in greatness. But instead of building a long-lasting legacy, his career became a series of what-ifs. As the years went on, Bowe's decline became more obvious. His performances lacked the sharpness that once made him elite. The physical toll of inconsistent training and weight issues began to show. Losses started to pile up. The same crowd that once cheered his dominance now watched with disappointment as he struggled to keep up with younger, hungrier fighters. What makes fame so dangerous is that it doesn't destroy you overnight. It slowly changes your habits, your mindset, and your priorities. For Bowe, the change was gradual but devastating. The hunger that once pushed him through grueling training sessions was replaced by comfort. The focus that once guided every move in the ring was clouded by distractions, and the discipline that once made him champion was no longer there to hold everything together. It's important to understand that Bowe wasn't lacking talent. He wasn't lacking opportunity. What he lacked, especially later in his career, was consistency and control. Fame gave him everything he ever wanted, but it also took away the very things that made him successful in the first place. Looking back, Bowe's story is not just about boxing. It's about what happens when success comes faster than you're prepared to handle it. It's about how external rewards can sometimes weaken internal drive. And it's about how even the most gifted individuals can lose their way if they don't stay grounded. There are moments in his career that still remind people of what he could have been. Those flashes of brilliance, those dominant performances, they're like glimpses of a version of Bowe that never fully reached his potential. And that's what makes his story so powerful. Not because he failed completely, but because he came so close to something truly legendary. In the end, Riddick Bowe remains one of the most fascinating figures in boxing history. A champion who had everything, lost control, and never quite found his way back to the top. His rise was incredible, but his fall was a reminder that talent alone is never enough. Fame didn't just elevate him. It exposed him, it tested him, and ultimately, it changed him in ways that he couldn't overcome.